This is SportsZone here on ClubZone.fm, and it is time to move into our top 10 most disappointing NFL players from this 2012-2013 season. And this is about a little bit of fun. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see what this list turns into. I don't know how ranking is going to go with this one. I don't know where me and you are going to agree and disagree. I'm saving our NFL power rankings to the end because I figure me and you are going to be pretty much almost right on point like we were last week, where it lasted all of like 6 minutes actually to our power rankings.
All right, so why don't we do it this way? Since we did our list a little bit differently, why don't you run through your 10 first, and then I'll run through my 10.
All right.
We'll see if any of them match up at all.
We can do that, and you can judge my 10, and then before you start your 10, and then I'll judge your 10 when you're done with your 10. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds fun. Love how we're talking about judging each other. It's so sweet. It's great. So we'll work backwards here. All right, at number 10, I put Mr. Darren McFadden. I'm disappointed because one of the things we talked about before the NFL season started was how good Oakland could possibly be offensively with a healthy Darren McFadden. Well, even when healthy, Darren McFadden was averaging less than 100 yards a game. He only had 2 touchdowns in 9 games played. Barely could run the ball. Some of the biggest plays by that offense did not come by Darren McFadden, but came by Mike Goodson and other running backs. And now he's injured and could possibly miss at least 1 or 2 more years. And from a fantasy aspect, he is a brutal thorn in my side when it comes down to my fantasy football team. So I put Darren McFadden at number 10. At number 9, believe it or not, this is going to sound a little weird, Ray Rice. But I'm not blaming Ray Rice for the disappointment. So I hope you guys need to understand that. I'm not blaming Ray Rice for the disappointing. I'm disappointed with Ray Rice because the man averages less carries a game than any starting featured running back in the entire NFL. It is ridiculous. He averages over 4 yards a carry. He averages over 100 all-purpose yards a game, yet the man does not run the ball as much as he should. And it drives me nuts. And we've talked about this before. Now, whether he deserves to be on this list or not, you can tell me when I'm finished with my list. But I have Ray Rice at my number 9 most disappointing thing from this year. At number 8, I went with Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. Whichever way you want to go about it. Norv Turner, their defense. I don't care what particular part you want to point a finger at when it comes down to the Chargers. They're just disappointing as a whole. And I don't really think I need to elaborate much on that. People that know anything about football or follow football knows how disappointing the Chargers are. So, Chargers suck. I'm disappointing in them. At number 7, I went with Mario Williams. I think Mario Williams had high expectations. We all thought he was going to be a freak. He's shown freak capabilities. Signs big contract with Buffalo. Very disappointing year so far. At number 6, I went with the New Orleans defense. I know that's not a particular player, and I can't pick a particular player because outside of Malcolm Jenkins on that team, I feel like that entire defense just sucks, and they've been inconsistent and terrible. And with the 0-4 start, even with how well they've played over the last month and a half, they still most have a long, hard shot to make the playoffs. So I went with the New Orleans defense because I feel like they really set themselves up for failure. At number 4, I have Tony Romo and my 2 offensive linemen that the Cowboys invested $30 million in this offseason. I think between those 3 guys, you can look at why Dallas has struggled so much on offense at times this year. I could rip into more about them or go at the coaching staff if I want to, but the 2 guards that they invested $30 million in between the 2 of them and the turnovers by Tony Romo put them at number 4 for me. At number 3, I went with Cam Newton. Based on the expectations going into this year, I felt that people, and myself included, thought he was going to be much better, and he hasn't been. Thought Carolina could have been much better, and they haven't been. So I have Cam Newton at number 3. At number 2, I went with Mike Vick, Eagles, Andy Reid, could really go any which way. I don't really care what part of Philadelphia you want to point fingers at. I just say Vic because especially when they first were starting off bad, he kept turning over the ball. And then at number 1, I actually sort of have a tie at number 1, and I hope that's acceptable. I went with the combination of Tim Tebow and the Jets and Matt Castle and the Chiefs. Now, if I had to pick one, it's Tim Tebow. So that's why I say Tebow first. If you want me to pick one, I'll pick Tebow and the Jets. But I put them at a tie because, myself included, there were a lot of people out there that thought this Kansas City team could make a run for a wild card spot, maybe even push Denver for a...
Do you know why Matt Castle didn't even make my list?
Because you didn't think that going into the year.
Because
I know you didn't think that.
I knew
going
they sucked
into the
going
year.
into the year.
Yeah. I do want to throw out a couple honorable mentions real quick. I also put in Detroit because I was disappointed in what they did this year so far, but we were trying to stick with players. I put in DeMarco Murray for the injury that's kept him out forever and a day, it feels like now. Michael Turner and the replacement refs, just to put other things that were disappointing from this year so far. But
I don't necessarily have a problem with your list other than Tim Tebow.
As in
the Sanchinator should have been number 1. You can't call a guy an underachiever when he hasn't had a chance to get on the field. You can't. I have a hard time calling a guy an underachiever because it's not his lack of doing things on the field. It's the coaching staff won't put him in the game to get on the field, no matter how bad the offense is doing. So to me, it's not necessarily the fact that Tebow is underachieved. Has he been disappointing? Maybe. But I kind of went with a list of underachievers. My list is kind of a little bit different than yours. We got a lot of similar names, but they're in a lot of different spots.
okay, yeah, I had a hard time.
So that's my only criticism of your list is Tebow is not even on mine.
I actually put in our chat room that I actually have to agree with you. If I have to pick one Jet player to point the finger at, it's probably I should really point it more at Sanchez than Tebow, and I think that is a good point. And I will also say the one thing I can give the Jets, and the only thing that might possibly save Rex Ryan and Tannenbaum's job. The only thing I can say that might save their jobs is the loss of their 2 best players in back-to-back weeks. Earlier in the season, losing Holmes and losing Revis really did hurt that team. But it's football. Next man steps up. So I do agree with you. Honestly, if I had to pick one player, I probably should have pointed the finger at Sanchez and not Tebow. So, yeah.
That's your list.
That's my list.
You ready for mine?
Yeah,
Number 10, I had to combine 3 guys together. It's the only spot on my list where I did this. And I have a tendency to do this with my number 10 spot for teams or players or whatever. Just because there's so many guys that could fit in that last spot. But these 3 guys, the reason I picked them, is they're all from the same team. They're all just as underachieving as the next if you really think about it. Cam Newton, D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart.
Okay.
A team that was 4th in the league in rushing. A team that...
Just a year ago.
A team that went out and paid D'Angelo Williams. Had a lot of faith in what Jonathan Stewart could do. Now, he's been injury-riddled. And they just don't look like a team that even cares about running the ball anymore.
No, and they struggle hardcore with it. But I got to bite my tongue. This is your list, my friend. You waited till you waited till I was done. I'm waiting till you were done. My apologies.
No problem. Number 9, a guy everybody expects, even me, this week, I expect him just to be a monster. But he's had a lot of disappointing weeks this year. Calvin Johnson. Just been a little bit disappointing. He's a guy that himself talked about 2,000 yards this year. Not going to happen. Not even close to the same amount of touchdowns as last year. Not for a lack of trying or a lack of effort, but just for a lack of what Detroit's been able to do on the field this year. Calvin Johnson's been an underachiever compared to what he should be. Number 8, I got Phillip Rivers. So everybody knows he's a guy that when you talk about, he even a year, 2, 3 ago, people were talking about he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Guy who throws for over 4,000 yards. A guy who really misses Vincent Jackson right now. Number 7, I got the law firm. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Guy, Cincinnati went out and signed, trying to replace Cedric Benson. Figure, the law firm, he's been doing great up there in New England. Let's bring him in. He can only do good things for us. You haven't heard much from him. He's been a pretty disappointing off-season move, an underachieving, average at best, when you expect more from a guy like that. And a guy who's shown you more in years past. Number 6, I got McFadden. Because his whole career has been an underachieving disappointment. He's shown signs of greatness. But it's only in between injuries. And you know when you have him on your team, it's just a matter of time before he is on the disabled list. It's just how it works. Number 5, the most overpaid, underachieving man, Mario Williams. $100 million. Nothing to show for it, pretty much. I think he's got, 2 sacks maybe on the year? Maybe 1. I think that came last week.
It's not been good.
It has not been good for Mario Williams and his $100 million contract.
His $100.
Number 4, I got Mr. Michael Vick. Because between the injuries and the hype, he's been as underachieving as anybody else on this list. He's not what people thought he would be. He's not what Andy Reid thought he could turn him into. He is not the next Donovan McNabb. I'm sorry, Andy Reid. But your time, much like Michael Vick's, is up. Just be patient. A couple weeks away.
Yeah.
Number 3, I got Ray Rice. For a guy that is as highly thought of in this league, a top 3 running back, a guy you would take as a franchise guy in your team, he has underachieved dramatically. I mean, he may be averaging 100 yards total per game or so, but when you're getting 60 rushing and 40 receiving, that game's not that great, and he hasn't really found the end zone. He had a great 4th and 29 play the other day, but he can make so many of more of those plays for you throughout the game if you would just give him the damn ball. Steal page right out of Keyshawn's book. Give him the damn ball. They don't do it. They only have 2 losses on the year, and that's great for them. 9-2. But Ray Rice is underachieved. I don't care what anybody says. Number 2, I got Tony Romo.
You got Romo all the way up at 2, huh?
Number 2, America's team. Guy's going to lead him to the promised land. He's 32 years old, and the guy hasn't done jack squat. His whole career has been underachieving. Barely ever makes it to the playoffs. And when he does, he chokes. This year alone, he's choked. He's not that good. And one day Jerry Jones will wake up, decide it's time for a new QB. That time could be at the end of this year. And numero uno. Come on, do I even have to say it? The Sanchez. Sanchinator. This guy, he is the definition of underachiever. Everything he does on the field is underachieving. From every pass he incompletes to every fumble off his own lineman's ass. He is an embarrassment to the organization, and he is going to end up costing himself and Rex Ryan a job sooner or later. That's my list, my friend. Read 'em and weep.
pretty interesting. I will say, I don't think it's fair to put Calvin on there, just for the simple fact of the matter is, even though he's not scoring touchdown, he still leads the league in receptions and receiving yards. So I don't.
But has
think
he not, compared to what he is supposed to be in the pedestal that everybody has put him on, has he achieved to that pedestal? Has he achieved to that level?
The only thing that he hasn't done to get there is touchdowns. And
and it's only in the last 2 weeks that he's really been putting up a lot of yards, too.
He leads the league in receptions and receiving yards. That takes more than just 2 weeks worth of work.
Okay.
So
But again, he's number 9 on my list.
So I
didn't
can't
put him
say,
real high.
I can't say I'm the biggest fan of Calvin being there, but like you said, 9 on your list. So it's not like you put him at 4 or 3. Where you're like, you're the top 5 most disappointing player. And I will say, I'm a little surprised that you put Romo over Vic. I don't have an issue with you putting Romo on there. I don't at all. But the fact that you put Romo over Vic surprises me. That one I didn't see coming. Just because of the fact that I feel like Vic has more to work with, and yet Romo has played better than him. But it doesn't really matter because both guys have been very disappointing. Hence why they're on the top 10 most disappointing list of this 2012 NFL season so far. We might have to redo this. Like when the year's said and done, maybe we do this one again.